Okay, so this is Level Up, 10 lessons from 20 virtual fundraising events. Cody and I are both part of the Virtual Gala Collaborative, which is something that got started about 16, 17 months ago. It's what I like to call a Voltron of experts in different areas who've come together to be able to help create really good, really polished, really technically savvy, really strategic virtual fundraising events. I'm Arielle Glassman. I'm the managing director of Virtual Gala Collaborative. I am also a fundraising consultant. I've been a fundraiser for almost 20 years and a consultant for the last 9. And besides virtual events, oh, thank you. Thank you for my advanced happy birthday. I appreciate that. Besides virtual events, I love doing online fundraising, donor digital cultivation, CRMs, donor tools, and just overall fundraising strategy. So that's what I love to do. And I'm going to toss it to Cody to introduce themselves.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hayes. I am the founder of Marketing Mission and part of the Virtual Gala Collaborative with Arielle. It's so great to meet all of you. For some background on me and what I do, I help nonprofits leverage marketing and automation to make progressive social change. And so throughout my 6 years in the nonprofit industry, I've worked with over 20 nonprofits to help them grow their digital footprint, automate marketing systems, and grow their impact online. Some of my work has been recognized by Rival IQ, Give Better, a platform we'll talk about later, for #1 social media engagement and a nomination for Campaign of the Year. So we're super, super grateful to be sharing all of this with you and super excited to dive on in.
Excellent. Yeah, you can check us out at virtualgala.co. You can see case studies, other stuff. But let's get on with the presentation and off of the sales pitch. So, sales pitch again. No, why us? I just wanted to shed some light onto why Cody and I feel like we are here and as people who have some wisdom to share. Yes, we've raised over $17 million through virtual events in the last 1.5 years. But more importantly, take a look at some of the organizations we work with. There are organizations on here in every sector. You know, if you look at Teen Ticks, we helped them with their event that raised $45,000. We helped Children of Armenia Fund with an event that raised $4.5 million. So what we're teaching today isn't just for big organizations. It isn't just for organizations with big budgets, large staff. These lessons can work for everyone in some shape or form. So just wanted to put that out there that if you're coming from even an all volunteer run organization, there's something in here for you. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So my very first lesson is to get everyone on the same page about a lot of things. And this is something we've definitely learned the hard way a couple times. You know, some of the clients I've worked with, you know, got very far down the path of planning when they realized that they hadn't checked with their board about what the fundraising call to action was, or their team all of a sudden wasn't as comfortable with the whole prominence of fundraising and what the tone was in their event. And then you have to walk back and redo things. And in these processes, there's not a lot of time for that. So I think it's really important to get people on the same page about the theme of the event, which we will talk a lot about. Just how prominent fundraising is. You know, we've done some work with organizations who actually really felt like the community building aspects of their event were more important than the fundraising. And we had to adjust what you're raising money for, what stories you're telling, and the tone of the event. Is it a light event? Is it serious? Is it funny? Is it arts and culture? You know, can the whole thing be performances? These are things that everybody kind of has to have a shared understanding of. And also, donor recognition culture, which actually directly correlates with the platforms that you choose or can really influence that. And by that, I mean, you know, is your event that you're making virtual a luncheon where everybody puts a check in an envelope inside another envelope and nobody knows what anybody's giving? Or is it an auction where like you have people standing up and being like, I want everyone to see that I just raised my paddle for $5,000. That can really vary between organizations. And make sure everybody in your organization's on the same page about that before you dive into the rest of the planning. Who should be brought onto the same page? Head back for 1 second, Cody. Your staff team, definitely your executive director. Depending on how involved they are in planning, they might be aware of everything as you go. They might not. If you've got an event committee, whether they're all board or people outside of the board, definitely your board, any consultants and planners you're working with, people who are producing your videos, and the people who are helping with your broadcast. It's really, really important to start off on the right foot, on the same page with everyone. Okay, let's go. So my first lesson is to, frankly, project manage the shit out of your event. And Cody, if you could make your next click. I'm not just saying this because I am like the Capricorniest Capricorn of all time, and we love lists and we love planning, even though I am. But this is true for everyone, right? So part of success is being in control, and also everybody feeling like you have a sense of control throughout the process, especially if you've made it this far in the pandemic and you haven't done a virtual event yet. You probably will not feel that way naturally from the beginning. So I really encourage you to use collaboration tools, whatever works for you, to kind of create a centralized event management hub. Our team uses Google Docs, but that's typically because we're working with tons of organizations who have all different kinds of internal infrastructure. And we don't want to make our clients learn something, difficult, or, a platform for task management that only we're familiar with. We really try to make it very broad and general. So we mostly use Google Sheets and Google Docs. But, if your team already uses Asana, you already use ClickUp, or you use cool tools like Coda, which Cody introduced me to recently, which is a really awesome way to kind of connect documents of all different kinds. Whatever that is, make it work. And you want to make this like the one source of truth about the event. Keep your meeting agendas there. Keep all your notes there. You want people to be able to go back and be like, what did we talk about? What did we decide? Documenting all that stuff and making sure that nobody's boxed out from it. Your timelines, creative ideas that come up. Once you've got your show designed, making that accessible. The fundraising strategy pieces, production tools, your budget, all of those pieces that you have to put together, keep them in a centralized place. There's also an element of who and sort of how we manage those things. And I would really recommend that everybody have a consistent weekly kind of all hands of everybody who's involved in the planning for your virtual event, just on an ongoing basis. And then I recommend sometimes 2, but often 3 sub work groups where a lot of the real work could get done. And those are fundraising, creative, and marketing. So a lot of times you'll have people who are like, I'm super creative. I want to figure out the stories, and they have nothing to do with the rest of it. Great. Be in the creative work group. And there are those brave people who are all about the fundraising, and that's the place where we really get in the weeds on strategy. And I would recommend that you meet 2 times a month for each of those, probably a little bit more in that very early phase of planning, again, where you're really same paging everyone and you're really starting to figure out the strategies that you'll use for the rest of it. So that is project management. Let's click forward. So you will get a copy of these slides, so don't feel like you have to memorize this, but this is an actual screenshot of a, part of our project management timeline in Google Docs from a client that is happening now. This is actually from the Children of Uganda virtual event that we're producing in November. And you can see here that there's 2 lists, all the columns are important, but column A, due dates, or the date to do a thing by, and column C, what kind of thing it is. So it's really important to track like the technology decisions you're making, fundraising strategy, marketing, audience development, production, story ideas. So what I like to do is to be able to sort this by date and see everything that needs to happen soon, but also be able to sort it by category and be able to step back and say, with the creative work group, look at everything related to content and program and make sure that group is really on target with the timelines just for that thing. And a tool like this allows you to do that. We probably switch back and forth between those views 2 or 3 times in a weekly meeting, or, kind of just focusing on one in a regular subgroup. We have a question from Karen, the actual date of the event. That is Saturday, November 13th. It'll be on GiveButter. We will definitely send out information on my newsletter about it for sure. So yeah, I love spreadsheets. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a super useful tool. Let's move forward. Okay. So one of the things, especially if you've ever taken any of my other webinars, you know that I love to talk about goals. Not just that you have to have them, but how to set them and why that is the case. So I tend to stick with 3 C's of goal setting, and that is consistent, conservative, and crushable. And honestly, they're all related. So when I think about consistency, you know, especially if you're virtualizing an event that you've had for a long time. If you regularly raise like $500,000 on this event, like don't just go willy-nilly setting like $1 million goal out of nowhere, right? And it sort of has to be realistic and aligned with what you've done in the past. Conservative sort of works with that too. My MO on goal setting is really taking kind of optics and psychology of the donor into play, where I'd rather set a goal that I know I can beat because it really changes the stewardship story. And that's where crushable comes in. Let's think about an event where you raise $100,000. Let's say your goal was 100,000 and you raised 100,001. That is, you beat your goal by $1,000, sort of hair of your chinny chin chin. And the feeling there is, we made it. Almost didn't, but we made it, right? And then if you set an $80,000 goal, knowing that you can get to 101, that super changes the story, right? All of a sudden you're in a story with your donors where you are like, oh my God, donors, you are amazing. We never expected this. You knocked it out of the park. This is a huge win for us. People are going to remember how being part of the event made them feel more so than they're going to remember the exact dollar amount that you raised like a year later. So that's super important to me. And what we do is we plan for that in our shows. We plan to go over a crushable goal. And we actually have a lot of choreographed strategy about when gifts get entered in the background along the whole event that supports that. So yeah, those are my 3 C's of goals. Let's go next, Cody. Okay. Do not set a public goal up front. And it says there, and I'll say it again, I'm sorry for yelling, but this is all caps worthy. We set our public goals 1 to 2 days before the event. We look at how much money we've raised in advance, what those commitments are. We look at registration. We look at average gift sizes from events in the past. We look at how many people are, quote, in the room who haven't committed yet. And we make a calculation. And we pick that crushable, conservative, and probably somewhat consistent number. It can really set you up to fail if you set a number too soon, or if you take advice from, you know, somebody on your event committee who maybe works in tech and is like, just set a huge goal, it'll super inspire people. Don't listen to those people. Listen to us. This has worked every time. This strategy is the reason why Rainier Scholars set a $1.8 million goal and ended up raising 2.3. We were completely prepared for the moment. We knew everything in advance. We had spreadsheets lining it up and timing the entry. We created that momentum and it knocked it out of the park. Okay. What other kinds of goals though? It's not just money. Cody, why don't you talk about these next two?
Awesome, awesome. Well, as Ariel said, it is not just about money for your virtual fundraising events. It is also about registration goals, new supporter goals, testimonials, and then even qualitative goals. So for our registration goal, this is obviously how many people do you want showing up for your virtual event? And it's really important to think about this and kind of reverse engineer and think through how many people do you need to attend this event in order to reach that fundraising goal. So you can do some reverse engineering and actually go back to look at your data from past events and look at your fundraising history, look at average gift size, and you can work to kind of calculate that average gift size by multiply that by your X number of registration goals to reach your fundraising numbers. Because we are also talking about virtual or hybrid events with an online component, we also want to talk about new supporter goals as well. A lot of what we've recognized and focused on in the last 18 months is accessibility and making the beauty of a virtual fundraiser is it doesn't cost more to get one more person in the door. You've already covered your costs. And so if you can have an awesome show and bring in 50 or 100 new supporters that have never given to your organization before, maybe this is just them wanting to show up to see what you're all about. And then they see this incredible show that you're putting together, they are going to get involved, as Ariel was saying.
Yeah, I mean, virtual events are, at least they have the ability to be, acquisition monsters, right? And if you don't set a goal for something, it's hard to manage towards it. So we really recommend this. This is one where you can shoot pie in the sky, right? As opposed to your fundraising goal, where we really want it to be something that is ultimately achievable because of optics and the feelings you want your donors to have. A couple other things. So testimonials goal. What I mean by this is that in most of the virtual events we do, and I think in a lot of the other ones I've seen in the community, we like to bring in, short video validations of the organization from people of all different perspectives. And it's not just about how many you get, but the quality of them and the diversity of perspectives reflected in that. And to a certain degree, depending on your organization, maybe celebrities. Like I just about lost my mind this week when we learned that Bono is considering doing a testimonial for our Children of Uganda event. And we already got one from LeVar Burton. And it was like, we set our sights high because we knew that people involved in our team had connections in LA and knew some of those folks. And we set a big goal for that. And I'm super excited that we're kind of getting there. And other qualitative goals. And what do I mean by that? So I'll use the event that I managed for Facing Homelessness this spring as an example of that. So Facing Homelessness has an incredible project called the Block Project. If you haven't heard of it, take a look after the webinar. It is a very innovative new housing program that actually builds homes for people who are living unhoused and unsheltered and gives them a place to live. And they have this huge community of construction and architecture and engineering companies who've been involved from the beginning, who have helped them design these houses, helped make them. And they have a fundraising event just for this community every year where the money goes straight to the Block Project. But this year, we sort of recognized the idea that kind of siloing these folks, just thinking about the Block Project, was maybe just potentially leaving money on the table, and that we wanted to engage them and tell them more about the other programs. They really didn't interact with other pieces of the organization. So one of our qualitative goals was do great storytelling about the other two programs and the organization as a whole, and bring in testimonials that are not just about the Block Project, that they're really about the whole organization, and educate this group on the fullness of what this organization is and how this thing that they have loved and helped create fits in to the broader strategy. So that's an example of what I mean by a qualitative goal. Okay, let's keep going. Google is not our friend today. Social proof from the right people. Trust, credibility, and validation are three words I have there. They are really important. People have to trust your organization, and often it's who else is in the room, who else is supporting, who else is involved that can sway sometimes. So we want to talk first about some ways you can incorporate different people in your event, and then who to think about incorporating in your event. So the first one is your MC and your host. And to me, this is one of the most important ones because they're really the glue of the show. But it's also a good idea for them to have some kind of connection to the mission. Like, it seems weird if it's like somebody out of nowhere who's super charismatic, but really doesn't have an angle of approach to care about what you do. One of my favorite MC setups for one of our events was actually for the Teen Tix event, where we had someone host who actually was there at the founding of Teen Tix and knew the whole story of the organization, top to bottom. And they were really invested, both in their time and their energy and financially. And it just made perfect sense. Having opening and closing statements like a goodbye or a hello, often board members, that's another way to do it. You're gonna have narrative videos where you're telling stories about programs and impact. Who are you gonna interview in those? Who's got the right perspective? It's another way to think about it. Sometimes if you have a live panel or Q&A, who's the moderator? Who are the guests, right? Who are the right people to shed light on what you do and how you do it? We talked about testimonial videos. Yes, Elise, I see your comment. These slides will be shared. I pack a lot of information in, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. We talked about testimonial videos already, and also the ask. And I just want to encourage you to think about the ask differently than we might think about in, in-person events. For one thing, the rhythm of virtual events is very different. A classic gala or luncheon is like, make the case, make the case, make the case, make the case. Oh my God, big ask, we're done. And virtual events tend to be more like this, right? We tend to have more moments where we check in on success because the tools allow us to do that in real time. And multiple moments where we actually might be saying the words, donate now, give now. So the ask doesn't have to be that kind of classic, I hate to say it, wealthy white person who gives a lot and who should be theoretically inspiring others. One of my favorite asks that we have done, I will actually say, come back to two examples we've talked about already, teen tics and facing homelessness. We actually wrote a compelling ask script and had people from the community record it, and or for facing homelessness, do it live. We had multiple camera stations and like people were coming in and out to do their part, but we actually made it more from the community and from a variety of people to, again, in that moment where you're asking for funds, demonstrate that this is not just one person, that this is a broad community full of different kinds of people who care about this and who think you should too. And there's more, but I won't go on. Let's talk about who. Okay. So, board members. Duh. This is one of those things about building faith and trust and credibility where, you know, the board is fiscally and legally responsible. Donors want to see that they're involved, that they care, that they know what's going on. Your CEO and executive director, definitely a must. And even if they're not maybe the most compelling speaker, or maybe they're an introvert and they don't love public speaking, you can record them. They don't have to be live, but it's important that the leadership be seen and that they have something to say. Because like it or not, our CEOs and our EDs are a big part of how we attract dollars to the organization. So the next one is your program participants or alumni in your programs. And, you know, this is about really showing the impact, but Cody, go ahead with the next one. You must look at this with an equity lens, right? When we are telling stories, when we are asking people who we serve to speak on behalf of us, we have got to be careful of the dynamics. They might not want to do it, but they might feel pressured if you ask a certain way. It's just something to be really thoughtful about. Yes, you've helped them, but from a certain point of view, it can be a type of labor that we are asking them to do to participate in this event, whether it's recorded, whether it's live. We want to be cognizant of that. It's very similar with staff, and go ahead with this too. Look up an equity lens again. Please look at your staff participation through this. If your staff are super gung-ho, great. Invite them into the process. But remember, these people are already doing labor for you. They're probably underpaid and overworked. We all know what this field is like in terms of organizational cultures and the stress and pressure we live under. Do not force your staff to participate unless they're super excited. And again, remember that you may have people of color or people from marginalized communities on your staff who are burdened in different ways and who, you know, doing this would actually be even greater labor for them. So be cognizant of that as well. Donors is the next one. And look, there it is. Equity lens required. And kind of what I referred to when we talked about the ask moment is here, but also it shows up in testimonials and things like that. Why do you have to have the, you know, highest dollar donor be the one who gives a testimonial? What if you have somebody who's been giving to your monthly giving program for 10 years, right? They have loyalty, they have consistency. That's actually the behavior you want your audience to mimic and follow, because you want loyalty, you want consistency, you want to build that grassroots. And it's much more likely that the people watching can do what that donor is doing than the big donor who's giving millions. So, okay, one more, please. So if this is something, you know, this conversation around equity, A, at all in fundraising, B, as it pertains to virtual events, is something that you want to learn more about, you're feeling confused about, or you just want more resources, I really encourage you to check out communitycentricfundraising.org. It's an awesome, awesome movement that is all about fundraising that is based in social justice and equity. And it's really important that we move in this direction. So go ahead and check that out when you have a minute if you haven't already. They have a super cool Slack that you can join where you can be part of the conversation about how this industry is shifting more towards justice instead of, you know, white cis het capitalism, you know, everything that we are imbued in right now that was sort of the source of this sector that we're in. So, okay, celebrities is another one. We talked a little bit about that too. Again, part of this depends on who you're connected to. If you're in LA, you probably have relationships with celebrities already that you can call in. You know, when we worked on the Project Angel Food Telethon a year and a half ago, oh my God, I mean, we had to like bat them away with a stick, right? But they also had a producer who worked on their team. That said, you can get real celebrities, even if you're not in LA, but more importantly, think about celebrities as contextual. You know, if you are a marine biology organization, why not get the like marine biologist who just made the biggest discovery that the whole industry is like, about at that moment, and get them to speak. That's a contextual celebrity. So the people who are well known to your audience in your field, even if it's highly specific. And finally, this is a weird one, but sometimes government officials, you know, people who are kind of involved in the civic and the way that government plugs into the work that you're doing or the sector that you work in. You know, I've had, you know, the King County executive submit a video for one of our events, council people, people who are actually in federal positions with a certain type of audience or a certain type of person, especially with certain different mission spaces. This can make a lot of sense. So there's lots of other out there, but these I think are the ones that you really need to make sure you're thinking about. And if you can get celebrities or contextual celebrities, all the merrier. Okay, let's keep going.
All right. Now to my favorite part, which is picking an event theme. So when you are thinking about putting your event together, do not underestimate, and I repeat, do not underestimate the power of a theme. An event theme really has the power and the ability to set the tone for your event. It also has the ability to draw a crowd for your event, because by repeating what that theme is in your visual identities, your communications, people are going to remember it. It also, picking a theme also has the ability to differentiate you from sister organizations or other organizations out there that may be competing for your donors' attention. I mean, it's event season after all. There's a ton of fundraising events happening right now. So your event should really unify your objectives and relate to your current programs and motivate your supporters to take action. With this theme, it's really important to make sure that you are forecasting content and setting expectations. So what we mean by this is, I'll use the example from Legal Foundation of Washington, for example. Their theme for that event was committed to equal justice. So you best believe we incorporated that into every single social media post, email, and even into the script and some of the on-screen visuals as well. Again, make sure your theme is very forward-looking. This event isn't simply a moment to recognize everything that you have accomplished. It is also a moment to reinforce the idea of where you're headed and how a gift from your donor is going to help you accomplish whatever you have coming up on the horizon. Kind of seems like a lot to pile onto a theme, but trust us, it works. This theme can also help you influence your set design, which Ariel has some exciting sets to show you here in a little bit. Once you have, yeah, let's look at some examples. So this first one here is Moving Mountains, a televised benefit for the children of Armenia. So as Ariel mentioned, this was the event where we raised $4.5 million. Ariel, do you want to speak to kind of where this event theme came from?
Sure. So for one thing, this was supposed to be a super glitzy Christmas gala, which is what they normally do in the winter. And then Armenia and Azerbaijan, their neighbor, got into a conflict and war broke out. And all of a sudden, super glitzy Christmas gala was not the thing. So we had to pivot very quickly into the sort of emergency relief telethon mode. And Moving Mountains really accurately described what the donors were being asked to do, what we felt the organization was doing, and sort of the size of the challenge ahead for jumping in and helping provide relief for refugees, which is essentially what we were raising funds for. A couple other things, you can see here that we've got mountains in there. That's Mount Ararat. That is the mountain of Armenia that every single Armenian, both there and in the Armenian diaspora around the world recognizes the silhouette of. So it was an immediate visual connector to the land itself. Finally, we didn't even come up with this name. A donor came up with this name. Actually, the mother of one of the staff of Children of Armenia Fund, she was in the background on one of our calls, and he goes, "Mom, what should we call this?" And she goes, we're like, I think it was, "Mom, what is it about what we do that is so awesome?" She goes, "You move mountains for the kids." And it was just like instant and automatic from that moment. And we knew that she represented that audience that we were really looking at, diaspora Armenians living in the US or other countries, and asking them to participate. So we went with it, and it was a huge success. This is the campaign that Cody mentioned was nominated for Campaign of the Year at Give Butters Toasties earlier, and is still the highest grossing campaign on that platform to date. Okay.
Awesome. Here is another theme that we have. This was for the Housing Development Consortium's annual celebration. The theme was Under One Roof. As we were developing this theme, one of the things that was really important to HDC was the slope of the roof. And you may be thinking, what? It's just a roof. But when it comes to affordable housing, it is not just a roof. Houses look very different. We have single family homes, we have apartment buildings, we have condos. And so making sure that the logo or this theme that we used was super accessible and also reflective of the housing that they were building was very important. So as you're thinking about what this theme is or how to bring it to life visually, be very mindful of just how the visuals will be perceived by your audience.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing about Under One Roof, which is that HDC is not an organization that themselves, quote, builds housing. They are the convener for hundreds of organizations in Washington State, or actually primarily King County, that do this work. And so the notion of Under One Roof represented that all those organizations found common place, common values, and shared purpose within what HDC did. So this one was a winner for a number of reasons. Really, really great. And it was a fairly serious subject matter. So you don't see some of the flash or sizzle that you'll see in some of the other examples that we're having, including KPC Strikes Back, which is an event that we're working on right now for Kirkland Performance Center. It is Star Wars themed, maybe you could tell. And we really actually feel like this theme, it's fun. Last year they had a Back to the Future theme. So kind of continuing this pop culture theme related to popular movies, but more importantly, like this is about where they're positioned in the pandemic, right? We're sort of in this middle zone, like Empire Strikes Back, where the fight's getting really real and we know we need to do it. Not quite at Return of the Jedi yet, where we're out of the woods and having 400 people back in the theater every night. And it really is asking and inviting the audience to help us strike back against this pervasive thing that has really cut the legs out from under the arts and culture community, among many other things, at this time. And the whole, all of the, branding for it, everything really relates to this. And you guys can't tell anybody, okay? But we just got a testimonial from Billy D. Williams for this event. So like the theme is infused into everything that we are doing. Okay, next one. So Lead with Love, myself and another member of Virtual Gala Collaborative, Gabriel, who is in the chat, I can see talking to a lot of you guys, but we worked on the 2020 version of this event. And this theme, it just, oh my gosh, it was the best rhetorical device we could have asked for. Talking about leading with love. It was something that the celebrity people who were hosting and who were testimonials or performing could say. It showed up everywhere in the rhetoric. It just was such a winner. And this organization, they got over 1,300 new donors from this event. It was crazy. So this was super successful. Everybody can see themselves when you ask the question, do you want to lead with love? And I think that's why it succeeded so much. Okay, next one.
Uh-oh, where'd we go?
Go back to the slides and stop the video.
There we go.
I can't believe the link was in there, even though we hadn't sailed in the image yet.
Yeah.
So CHTV is Campbell Hall TV. So I won't tell the whole story, but Campbell Hall, which is a private school in LA, independent school, was the first event that VGC worked on together. It's actually where we all met and decided to keep going and bringing our perspectives to other nonprofits. And we worked on their event again this year. And the theme was CHTV, a la MTV. This was super fun. And I actually wanted to use it as an example, again, of how the theme can just drive through everything. You're going to see some pictures of the set later on, so you'll take a look. But Cody, this would be a great time to play the video that we linked to, because this, even the trailer video, just completely, turn the sound on maybe?
Yep.
Just embodies the 80s and MTV, right? I don't think we have the audio because it's copyrighted, so we're not going to do that. But Bill Bellamy was the host. It made sense. He's also a parent at the school, but alignment there. He was an MTV host, right? You can see this sort of vintage vibe of the film, right? It's sort of a little, you get some little scratches in there. It looks like TV from the 80s, right? And so you can even see the graphics on there. So this event to me was an example of how you can take one theme and literally apply it to everything that the event has going for it. And it creates just a really great alignment and a great experience for the donors. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. And thank you for doing that on the fly when I was supposed to, and my computer would not do it.
Of course. No
Okay.
worries.
Take it away on brand.
All right. So once you have this theme picked out, and this is when truly the fun stuff starts, because we get to develop so many assets to theme and brand this entire event. So when you bring your event theme to life with a beautiful brand identity, it can really make sure that your content and your message is consistent. So we are usually creating the following items for virtual events. First off is an event logo. That can either be a simple mark like moving mountains that's on the screen right now, or it could be a mark with a tagline or maybe your organization name in there to provide some additional context to this event and this branding piece. Also, don't be afraid to use colors that you normally wouldn't. If, for example, if your colors are yellow, which co-ops were yellow, you can also use other colors to accent or complement those. And think through the psychology behind colors. We were really intentional of using blue in the Moving Mountains theme because blue portrays trust, and obviously we want to build trust with our donors. Similarly, don't forget about your fonts or your typography. Even just keeping your same colors but mixing in a more fun or eclectic font can be enough to elevate the design or the branding or the social media post, so it stands out from what's usually on your social media or email feeds. Similarly, use textures. You'll notice some in the background of these graphics. This texture is actually just a blurred version of the logo with that mountain in the back. And so as you are developing this logo, selecting your colors, fonts, and textures, once you have those core components, then you can switch over and use them to create your social media graphics, your email promos, even the full screen live stream graphics, which you're seeing being circulated through right here, along with lower third nameplates for introducing speakers or guests during the event. Awesome. Okay, so once you have this content all created, or this brand identity picked out, it is time to get marketing. And you may, in the virtual world, I would say that you don't have to plan out as far in advance as you thought. think you do. Typically in in-person events, you're thinking like, oh, months beforehand, I'll mail out a printed save the date and then follow up maybe with some personalized emails, things like that. For virtual, honestly, are any of us planning beyond 2 months from now for our life activities? So let's think about maybe 8 weeks of a sample outline for your event. So week one, hitting them with a save the date, and with that save the date, whether it's being sent out via Facebook or email, include a calendar invite. Or a Facebook event. This way, people can actually get that time reserved off on their calendar, and they know that it is currently, we know that it is reserved on their calendar. Week two, send out your registration announcement. Make that big announcement, maybe with a video from someone from your team or an alumni of your program. Or maybe a current participant of your program saying, hey, this event is happening and we so want you to be there. You'll notice from week two, we've kind of skipped week three. And I always like to give people a little bit of a breather because that first initial registration announcement can be a lot from people. It's the first time that they're hearing from your organization. So what I like to do is to have that week two be your registration announcement. Reserve week three for your own organic content specific to your organization and your organization's values. That way, if people are just seeing your this registration announcement for the first time, or we get into week four and they're seeing a registration reminder, if they're scrolling back through your social feeds, they say, oh, this is this organization's mission statement. This is their values. This is what I can expect by getting involved. And then hitting them in week four with that registration reminder, the hello, we're having this event, sign up. And then moving into week three, where we're addressing, or week five, excuse me, addressing the problem and solution. So this really is your chance to do a deep dive and say, what are we raising money for? Why do we need to raise money? Why is it so important right now? And then showcase your organization's programming or your organization as the solution to solving or helping solve that problem. Really, it's your time to go ham on explaining your mission and including maybe some testimonials or examples of your work in action. You want to visualize your organization's impact and then include a call to action saying, register for this event so you can get involved and help us make more positive change happen. And then into week six, this is where you can start promoting your event program highlights. So if you have awesome celebrity speakers or community supporters, or maybe you're having a raffle and it's time to open up the early bidding for that raffle. Week six is a great time to start promoting those program highlights because it can really get people excited and to attend the event. Because if they are already engaging, already placing their bids online for their auction, they're going to show up to see if they win. And then week seven, this is where we are going ham on registration reminders. We have a tendency to over communicate in this last week, and the reason is we get honestly 50% of attendee registration in that last week because people have a tendency to save things for last minute. So don't feel like in this last week, I don't want to overwhelm people because you want people to attend. So we always recommend doing a 1 week registration reminder. Maybe that's 7 days, 5 days, whatever you prefer. And then a 24-hour countdown. In this 24-hour countdown email that goes out, there are tools that you can use to actually have a countdown clock in that email. And that is the #1 email tool that we use for events because it works. That psychology is they think, oh no, I have to sign up right now. And yes, you do. And then the day before or the morning of the event, we always recommend sending an email to the attendees only. And this is instructions on how to watch and donate during the event. If you have a free event, meaning you're not requiring tickets to be purchased, you can send this email out to everybody because it doesn't hurt. And if there's no barrier, there's no cost, and you just want them to watch. This last effort to get people in the door and say, hey, you're still invited, even though you haven't registered yet. You don't even have to register, just go watch it here. It will also help. And then finally, the Monday or the day after your event, send out a thank you. And we want to do a big social push and email push saying, thank you, this is how much money we raised, and tie and be sure to include, specifically where that money is being put, or what impact that these additional funds will have on your organization. I want to really just lay it out for people.
Before we move on, I just want to, Rebecca in the comments noted the title of the slide. And while it's not something I recommend your personal life, it is actually very rhythmic, this whole process. This is built to acknowledge the fact that in virtual events, we often see a lot of registrations first, and then as time goes on, sort of, oh, people stop paying attention. And then as you get closer and closer and closer and closer, attention comes back up. Imagine this is a graph, right? I'm kind of drawing a U shape. So this is designed to acknowledge that that is human nature, but also to provide some things that in the middle of that process that might actually help kind of get you back up and running with momentum sooner. And so that's sort of why we think of it as the rhythm of this. All right, let's keep going. So building your run of show, no one else's, right? I think a lot of us watch virtual events and go, why didn't I do that? Or that was such a cool idea. And yes, definitely swipe cool things from other events that you've seen. But at the same time, you need to build your event, no one else's, right? So here are some of the, things that are often involved in virtual events where you can differentiate based on your organization. So first is a cold open, which you probably know from SNL, but in our context, we try to start every event with something that gathers attention immediately, right? Energy shifts somehow, it brings you in, and it can look different. For Moving Mountains, it was very serious. There was a very kind of not somber, but calm message from a well-known member of that community who we knew would make people snap to attention. And we've opened others with comedy bits. We're going to open the KPC event with a Star Wars scroll with trumpet music behind it, explaining what happened to KPC during the pandemic. So that is something we love to do. It brings people's attention in, and it should be totally different between different organizations. We've talked already about host and MC roles, and those are big opportunities to differentiate. Performances as well. If you're an arts organization, you have a leg up. You can probably have more performances in your event than others are. But having a stellar performer or something unique can really be a draw. And also celebration moments. You'll see a screenshot of one later, but celebrate at the end, right? Like do it on your own terms. At the Teen Tix event, we shot confetti out of champagne bottles. Teens, alcohol, but it was really, really fun. And we got to do it on camera live. It was super great. Something similar at the end of the Campbell Hall event. And also interactive elements. And I'll give you an example. So we worked on the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, their breakfast earlier this year. And at that event, they every year, like clockwork, have a moment that they call the stand-up moment, where whoever is speaking asks the audience to rise out of their seats and stand if they or someone they know has been affected by sexual assault. And of course, 99% of the room stands because of the pervasiveness of this phenomenon. And it's just this incredible moment that is poignant and overwhelming. And you look around and you get this sense that, no, I'm not alone. And it's incredible. And we had to find a way to recreate that moment. So we were actually able to take an interactive web tool and give people the opportunity to participate in a way that actually showed the volume of participants blooming in real time. And we had it on the screen and we held a moment of silence for it, right? We didn't try to talk over it. We didn't try to move on too fast. That was exactly right for them. So that's a good example of building interaction in. That's not just like, people tell us we have to have interaction, so let's have interaction. It's got to have a purpose. That tool, Katie, to answer your question was, oh my gosh, it's that one on the tip of my tongue. I bet Daphne knows. Daphne, our content consultant, is in the chat watching today. Oh, it's so famous. What is it? I'll look it up during the Q&A. We'll figure it out. Oh, Mentimeter. That's what it is. Menti.com. You can use it for a lot of things, but we had people do a word cloud with their first names, right? So it was anonymous. You didn't have to put your full name in there, but it actually allowed different names of different sizes, and it really kind of bloomed and grew this word cloud in real time as it went. Okay, let's move on. Prove your show is live. I'm serious about this one. At this point in the trajectory of virtual events in this sector, if you are having an entirely pre-recorded event, A, shame on you. B, you are leaving money on the table. I 100% guarantee it. Do not do that. Okay. It allows you to do, real-time tracking of fundraising totals. This proves you're live, right? There's probably a thermometer on the page. People can see it, but actually bringing it into the live stream and showing those totals over time, they show that it is literally actually happening in that moment. People can see if it's false. And that liveness is so important. You can do it in real-time acknowledgement of donors and bidders and paddle raises if you have that kind of open giving culture. Another cool trick is to have the host or MC ask a question and then later refer to the answers people put in the chat. Then you know that he was actually there, or he or she or they were actually there looking and were responding in real time. The real-time interactions like the Case-Arc example, and of course, interactive Q&A, where it's like, oh, they picked my question. Okay, this is really happening. That liveness is just it's so intangible, but it's so important. And not only do you need a live show, you need to work so that people understand that what is happening in front of them is live and that they are part of a community engaged simultaneously in things that they care about. Okay, here we go. Yeah, next one. Okay, number 10. This is the one that I get the most detailed questions about, which is technology platforms for virtual events. And I'm not talking about like YouTube or Vimeo, although those have their pluses and minuses as well. I'm talking about the giving platform in your virtual venue. So I don't want to linger too long on going through these. Please take a look at the screen, and obviously we'll send out the slides and you guys will all be able to watch this on YouTube later. But there is no such thing as the perfect virtual event platform. There is a best one for you based on your event and a lot of factors, but there is no such thing as like the best one under the sun. So I wanted to make sure to lay out some of these factors for you, right? Revenue activations is a big one. If you don't have an auction, actually your field of choice is a lot bigger. Do you want people to kind of stay on the same page and be able to click and give or buy raffle tickets and bid without going away from the video? How flexible is the progress bar? We actually pick certain technologies for events that really do have a lot of real-time donor recognition, or sort of telethon style where everything is kind of increasing all the time, where the refresh rate is 2 to 3 seconds for a gift being reflected once it's processed. And there are others that have, that update every minute on the minute. And so it's not as consistent. So that might not matter for your event, but it also might. Confidence monitor, Gabe in the chat, who is our auctioneer and fundraising host, can speak to the importance of being able to bring information out of the system in a way that allows that person to react quickly, easily read who's bidding, easily read who's giving, and announce anything else that has to happen kind of in real time at the event that we maybe weren't planning to do. Next page. A lot of other things, does it integrate with your tools? Is it mobile friendly? If you've got a really young, donor audience on the young side, it better have text to donate capabilities. If you're reliant on virtual table captains, what can it do in that regard to help those people fundraise? Can it provide built-in interactions? Is the user design modern, or is it like knock, knock, 1997 called and it wants its, UX back? Is registration simple? Can you just like click log in with my Google? That's actually something I find increasingly important. Can it handle people from outside the US? This is one of the main reasons that we chose GiveButter for the Children of Armenia event, because a lot of the other options, it was US and Canada only, maybe Mexico if we were lucky. And that actually was a huge problem. Can you use it for hybrids? Does it have built-in communication tools of its own where you can say, send that like day of reminder that Cody talked about with giving instructions, et cetera, through that instead of like exporting the data and putting it in your MailChimp and all of that. Okay. Feel free to review that in depth later. We're actually going to give you some platforms that we love. Now, just because a platform that you have used is not on here doesn't mean it's not great. Maybe it was like one finger's breadth away from being on this list, but these are some that we've used and that have worked and that we love. So the first is GiveButter. We use this for a lot of events that are not auctions. Some of its cool features include a really cool supporter feed where like when you donate, you can like submit an animated GIF or a message or like scribble a message on your mouse pad and it comes up in real time. And it sort of announces your percentages for you as you go. There's some other cool things about it, but I love that. Next one. Trellis is another one I love. This is very full featured. It's got all the bells and whistles in terms of functionality, and it's got a one screen design. The thing I really love about Trellis is that if you have a very open giving culture where it's important to acknowledge donors in real time consistently throughout the event, they have literally an on-off switch overlay that just streams the names of people who are giving over and over so long as you have the switch on. And so that's really good for those organizations where that's a big priority. Keep going. QGive. So QGive is like the kitchen sink and the mudroom and the living room and all of the rooms. It does everything. So if you've got a lot of complexity, or if you have a ton of different ways that people are sort of revenue interacting, and you want to be really flexible with your design, like you can move stuff around on QGive pages, like in ways that a lot of other systems will not let you. Those are some of the reasons why I really like QGive. Fundraise is another one that is becoming more and more popular. This is the only platform I know that has an Instagram integration for fundraising. Like a couple other of them have Facebook. QGive has a Facebook integration. Fundraise has Instagram. And that is indicative of what is so great about this platform, which is that as they say, they skate where the puck is going, not where it is, right? They're looking to the future and trying to anticipate and kind of be the first to do some of these things that are really, really digital savvy. And finally, the next one is Classy. Now, Classy would not have been on this list a year ago because they hadn't really taken what they did and made it into something that was virtual friendly. And I actually steered a lot of my clients away from using Classy because it didn't have a thermometer that you could easily export or integrate or embed, things like that that are just so important. They released a bunch of new features earlier this year, and the rest of that system is so good that they're back on my you should take a look at it list. And I just wanted to name that. Like, one thing to think about is how are these platforms evolving? Are they staying in tune with the needs of the sector as we evolve deeper and deeper into digital fundraising? Rebecca asks about pricing. Go on back 1 second, Cody. So pricing, let's see. Trellis, Fundraise, and Classy all have a fee that you pay up front. Depends on certain factors. QGive is the same, but it's kind of modular based on what you pick. GiveButter can be entirely free if you allow it to ask your donors to add a tip for them when they check out. You can also turn that off and pay 3 or 5% platform fee on top of it. So they're all different. They're all have kind of different models, and it's just, you know, the investment you're willing to make. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so here we get into the bonus. Number one is check your tech. So this is inspired by a real experience I had earlier this spring, which I would say is the most harrowing 20 minutes of my 20-year fundraising career. And actually, the main partner for that event of mine with that client registered for this webinar. I don't know if she's watching, but if you are, you know who you are. And other people are going to get to learn from what happened to us. So we actually had a major platform outage during our event. In the end run, all was well that ended well to a certain degree. They actually raised the most money they ever had. They raised over $1 million. But when I looked back on that, I thought to myself, what should I have done to try to anticipate or prevent or just be more ready for that? And I would say that no matter what platform you used, find an actual human there who can be sort of your internal advocate. Some of them have people they assign to you. Others you might have to dig a little. Do they have a checklist for what you need to do that day? Do they have people who are available? Even if you have to pay extra for it, having somebody like there for the 4-hour window of your event, I mean, it could be incredible. It actually really saved the day on this particular instance I was talking about. Ask, have you ever had major glitches or service interruptions? What do you do if that happens? And sort of, okay, we're having, X hundred or 1,200 or 2,000 people watch this. We want to let you know that, and please, company, anticipate the load and adjust your servers accordingly. So with this organization, again, it was really rough. The company, I'm not going to name it, they were incredible in terms of how they tried to sort of make it up to the organization and, giving me reassurances. And I had another event with them the following month that went off perfectly because I did all of these things. So tech platforms are amazing, but they are not infallible. And you really have to prepare for the worst on the 1% chance that you're going to have to activate that plan. Okay, last one, and then we'll do Q&A. Happy to stay as long for Q&A as you want. So set design. You do not have to have your event in a basement studio in Soto with an 8-foot ceiling. And I want to show you some of the cool and unique sets that we have done. This is actually from the Seattle Rep Gala. They shut down in the middle of the pandemic last year. They had an active show going. And when we went to do this event a year later, the set was still on stage. So it created this poetic environment where we actually opened the show acknowledging that we're standing on the set that was the last show that this organization had before, tragedy of the pandemic struck and everything just stopped. It poetic is really the only word I can use. I think it was a huge advantage, and it was actually just really cool to be in there. It felt like we were in the mission together. So you may not be an arts organization, but let's keep going. There's lots of other things that you can do. So this was for the Holocaust Center for Humanity. They had their virtual event in the lobby of the center. And actually, at different points in it, you could see different exhibitions, different artifacts in the background. Again, it was very immersive, and it really made you, it put the mission in front of you in a way that was hard to look away from. Next one. This is the Campbell Hall event. So you can see, again, 80s everywhere. I think the set was dressed amazingly for this. It even went into the costumes, but also you could see that Viking helmet to the left there. That's the school's mascot, is the Viking. So they were able to put in little elements that were for the school and not just the theme. Next one. I also want to use this as an example of how you can use green screens. I think a lot of people think that green screens look cheesy or you don't actually know what to do with them, but take a look at the two bottom there. On the right is Gabriel, the virtual event fundraising host that we work with a lot. And on the left is a DJ who was doing interstitial moments. Next one. You can see they actually each had a variety of different backgrounds. So especially Kathy, oh my God, she had this crazy video installation behind her that was changing all the time. And it was an example of how we brought more vibrancy and more expressions of the theme and more color into the show, even though we didn't have to build anything to do it. Also, please feel free to bring saxophones to your virtual events to celebrate. That was a unique celebration moment. That's kind of one of the things I was referring to. You can see the confetti there, and also that Gabriel brought props and used them liberally. And that created a really fun moment. Okay, next. This is from a different Children of Armenia Fund event. We had this beautiful view of LA from the Hollywood Hills. This was a donor's home. We went to a donor and said, you've got a view. It's going to be nice out. Actually, it was 100 degrees. Poor Gabriel and Haig and Araxia were sweating bullets. It was crazy. But we found a unique setting. This was a soiree. The brand of this event was a soiree, an elevated party. So we actually wanted to have that vibe, and this backdrop, this setting kind of gave us the ability to do that. And my only advice when you do this is to kind of have a MOU or understanding in writing with the donor whose home it is, or other person whose home it is, about when you need to be there, how long you need to be there, what you need to set up, can we come in and check our internet and make sure it's stable, just so everybody has the same expectations when they're generously lending you their home. One more. And this one is from the Facing Homelessness event. This is Kirkland Performance Center, who not only are we doing their event, it's actually the venue for a lot of our Seattle productions because it is so spacious, right? It's very cinematic. It's got this huge ceiling, lots they can do. And in this case, I want to point out the banners. These are banners that they actually had. They're 10 by 10. And you can see here, you're getting a wide shot of all the equipment and everything. But in the close shots for the majority of the time, say the MC was talking, or we were having a live panel discussion that you see couches for on the left, those faces, those eyes were looking at you the entire time. It just put the mission there in a way that was inescapable. It put it right in front of you. You could not look at it. And it was just very powerful. Carol, that's Kirkland Performance Center. I'm happy to connect you. I see you in the comments. They go by KPC Studios now. So all right, next. Okay, we're done. Time for Q&A. All right, let's unshare.
Awesome. Yes, we have 3 questions so far in our Q&A. If you have them, drop them in. First one comes from an anonymous question asker. Thoughts on compensation for program participants, alumni, etc., who are asked to speak or participate?
I think that this is an organization by organization choice, but if you have the budget, I think it is absolutely a way to add some equity into your event and compensating those people for their labor and their time. It doesn't have to be huge, but that it's something. So yeah, and it's not like you're, the incarnation of evil if you don't do that, but it is something to think through, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Perfect. All right, we have 2 questions from Heidi Wong. And the first one is, how far in advance do you start planning a virtual event?
I would say you need a minimum of 3 months, and that's the minimum you need for it to be not like so stressful that you all want to die. Which maybe is a slight exaggeration, but we're in the middle of a process right now. Like, we've had 5 months on the Children of Uganda event, and it's felt luxurious. Like, we're all having a week where like none of us have that much to do, and we're like, this is crazy. This feels really weird. But I would say 6 or 7 months is actually probably too far. I think you're going to get a little mileage burnout on that. So my advice would be no more than 5, no less than 3, where possible.
Perfect. All right, next question from Heidi is there a certain percentage of virtual attendees that we should aim for in comparison to our normal in-person attendance?
Do you mean if it's a hybrid? Like how many people, how many in person? Because I'm not quite sure what the...
I think she is particularly asking if we see a higher number or a lower number when going virtual in comparison to in-person.
Honestly, I have yet to see a virtual event that did not or produce, maybe someone else has, but we have yet to produce a virtual event that did not attract more people than the most recent in-person version of that. This is one where like the more the merrier. So shoot higher. Yes. Probably by at least 20%, I would say. Why not?
Yeah. And the co-op event was a good example of that, right? We had, how many did they usually have in person at their gala? Like 200?
Oh, like 250. And then we ended up having over 900 donors. Who even knows how many people were watching? We ended up having 900 donors for the online version.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, next question comes from Kate. How does the cost...
Kate. Hi.
How does the cost of a live filmed event compared to an in-person event, taking into consideration food and AV?
I wish I had one solid answer for this, but it kind of varies. What I will say is that I have seen the cost of working with an AV studio or producers kind of essentially net out what you're not spending on food. And I would actually very much advise that, approach. Don't be like, sweet, we're saving money on food. Like, take that money and invest it in what makes, virtual events really succeed. I have seen virtual events that scrape by on a budget of 10,000 and they still had their goals. And I have seen virtual events where we spent 75 or 80. And those were for specific reasons. And, they all achieved ROI high enough to make it worth it. There's not quite one answer to that one, though.
Awesome. All right, next question from an anonymous attendee. How are you handling scheduling events right now when things seem so uncertain with the pandemic? Are you seeing orgs who have had to pivot from in-person to online for the fall, AKA what happened in March of 2020?
I've only heard of one former client right now. We're not working with them this year, who thought they'd be able to be in person in their sort of early October event, and then they went back to virtual. For the most part, the clients I've worked with, they've asked me, and I was able to help guide them. Most of them chose virtual for the fall to be safe because, legally allowed to do so by King County rules or wherever you live is different than my donors feel safe and like this is a good idea. And I think most organizations chose virtual this fall that we're working with. And honestly, we're having conversations with organizations with events between February and May right now who are basically saying, we're going virtual and we're keeping our minds open and creating ideas along the way for how, if it is safe to do so, we can plan to go hybrid a month in advance or so. Activating board members' homes for pod parties where people feel comfortable, things like that. But I'm seeing default virtual and kind of holding space for how we might go hybrid on short notice based on what's safe.
Love it. Well, a related question comes from Julie then. With all of these virtual events, how are we avoiding virtual event burnout?
Well, for your team, it goes back to lesson 2, which is project manage the shit out of your event. But for your audience, I would say it's 2 things. A great show that you market really well, right? If your marketing is boring, it says, I'm going to be boring. Don't bother. And if you can find ways to jazz it up and actually follow through and use teasers for what great content you're going to have, that's how you handle it. The truth is, this is here to stay. Even if hybrid is what we're doing like 3 years from now, we have at least this fall event cycle and spring cycle of probably mostly virtual going. It's just what is. To a certain degree, there isn't a way to avoid the fact that people would rather be together in person. This is the next best option, so make it awesome.
Yes, 100%. I want to add to that and say storytelling will be crucial. I mean, television's been around for 60 plus years, I think, and we're still watching it. But it's because of this storytelling aspect and the ability to make things entertaining and engaging. All right, another question from an anonymous attendee. At my last position this spring, we did a super low-tech virtual event on Zoom. Board members hosted breakout rooms to greet people. We had interactive trivia. We streamed performance videos and then had an engaging MC. It was truly a hit. What is your take on such a low-tech approach?
If it worked, it worked. And again, I come back to organizational culture, like what your organization is, what people are used to for your events, how close-knit is your community? If you are an organization where 80% of the people who come to your event every year actually know each other, I would say that having that level of authenticity, even though you're sacrificing some of the bells and whistles, is a good thing. I mean, you guys took a risk on it and it worked, and I commend you for that. Not everybody has to have the big giant show with a billion amazing videos that's also broadcast by a TV station. It's all about what's right for you. So I think there are cases, especially if budget is a concern, or if you're a very grassroots organization, or again, very close-knit community, it sounds like that was a great idea. And actually Zoom is putting out new tools. There's a donate button and plugin. There used to be some that you could, like outside ones, but I think they actually have a native one right now. So like they're moving along in the world. That actually makes me consider more thinking about using Zoom as an actual event tool versus just like a pre-event socializing tool. Even for some of our clients that are, sort of looking for something on the more sophisticated end.
Absolutely. All right, we have a question from another anonymous attendee. For annual fundraisers, do you still recommend having a theme, or do you recommend having the same theme or a new one for each year?
I would say that's a case-by-case basis. I'm trying to think of some organizations who do who kind of have their cake and eat it too, year over year. So for example, I used to be the development director at On the Boards, which is a very forward-looking avant-garde arts organization in Seattle. And our gala was called Spectacle Spectacular, but it was Spectacle Spectacular, something, something, something every year. And people looked forward to that shifting theme. So the commonality of the event being named Spectacle Spectacular helped with branding and marketing and consistency. But, 1 year it was Fire and Ice. 1 year it was Lost in Space. 1 year, it was like disco or punk or something like that. And so you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. I'll say another example is the Children of Armenia Fund soiree. It's always the co-op blah anniversary soiree. I think last year was 10, this year was 11. But they, again, it had sort of a sub name there. So get creative. I think you can kind of do it all. In fact, I'm actually working with an organization right now where they don't have an ongoing fundraising event. We're creating something new from scratch. And we actually, as we went through the theme process, which we just decided last week, we talked about it from a, what if we have this event in person in the future perspective? And we made sure to choose something that we felt we could carry out through virtual, hybrid, or in-person versions of that event. 5 Evermore.
Love it. All right. Should we, in this one, question is, should we involve beneficiaries during our event?
Yeah, I will come back to my previous advice on that, which is it depends. And if you do, make sure you are examining the power dynamics and the way you're asking them to be involved for how much labor it is. And, just, yeah, I come back to that equity angle. And again, check out communitycentricfundraising.org for more info on what I mean by that.
Perfect. All right, Julie has a question. It says, how do you find the happy median of emails being sent to donors when your organization is also sending email communications through other departments? You can take that one. I would say be really mindful of how you're segmenting your list. It could be that other departments are sending out emails just to your advocacy leads or just to donors. And so first, I would honestly make a list of kind of your email calendar for that month or the next quarter. And make sure that everybody is on the same page about what emails are going out, because if other departments are sending out emails and you're not sure of the size or how many emails are in that campaign, it can be overwhelming for your audience. And so finding the happy medium, I would say at max, try to send 3 emails a week, but truly try to stay within 1 to 2 a week, even if that means having to have some conversations with folks and asking them to maybe push their or pull their deadline for that email ask, a week or 2. And it's just really important to be really communicative with your team and recognize that although departments are separated, the donor experience is not.
Yes. And again, that's where project management comes in. Identify your marketing schedule up front and make sure you are working with those other departments so they know what you're doing and why, right? Don't just be like, it's mine, I get to do it, right? Bring them into the process so they see the bigger picture and they're more likely to want to play ball. The other thing is monitor your open and click rates as you go. You will know if your opens and clicks are way down, that people are maybe feeling a little burned out or just overwhelmed with the volume of it. So stay on top of those metrics.
Absolutely. And also, if there really are so many emails on the table, look at how you can combine them. It could be that, oh, we'll skip a registration announcement because it'll go out in our newsletter this week anyway. So just kind of balance and really just be mindful that people are humans and don't like email overwhelming them. Okay, so another question came from Jeff. What are your thoughts on hybrid events where the virtual component is hopefully, fingers crossed for in-person by November, he says, where the virtual component is a smaller component, but we still want to utilize it. Live has worked really well for us. Virtual worked well, but hybrid is still hard for me to wrap my mind around. So question is hybrid events.
Okay. I see that's from Jeff Boyer. Hi, Jeff, my love. We worked together a few years ago. I adore you. So if we don't get to the depth of this answer that you want, call me, we can talk. Hybrid events, we have to kind of start defining what we mean when we say hybrid, right? There's a way to do the hybrid that is like the Oscars, where you're filming a thing that's on a stage, but the audience who's in the room and their reactions are also part of that. And yet the show is not actually designed for them. It's designed for you at home. And you've got, pit crews roaming the seats in among the tables, filming people. I like to call it sort of that the award show style. That's going to really jack up your costs. And also finding venues that big on short notice, if you decide to go hybrid, could be really tough. So I'm thinking that for the time being, the best way to kind of handle hybrid is not necessarily to try to gather a ton of people in a big room. Maybe if you can find a private room at a restaurant and it's only a certain number of people who are there, and actually you're just all watching the live stream event like everyone else at home, but you're all together and you do have the chance to socialize. That's one way. Another way is to look at sort of a multitude of smaller pod parties, right? With the Kirkland Performance Center event, we're considering a couple things. One, if it's safe to do so, inviting people to the lobby of KPC, where the show is actually being filmed, inside the doors to the theater, but actually having it be on the TVs there, having drinks, having food there, and having people who feel comfortable being together actually able to be together. That's one thing we're considering. And this event is in like 3 weeks, so this is very relevant for right now. And the other thing we're considering is activating board pod parties. Great. You and your friends are all vaccinated. You trust each other. If you feel comfortable, we will give you a hand in helping figure out how to have a great little party in your home where you're all watching. Now, if you're doing the pod party thing, you have got to have a system that is mobile friendly with giving. That's one of the ones I do love Give Butter for, because their text to donate is so good. So you can all watch on one screen together, and then you're only looking at your phones when it's time to activate. Okay. So yeah, there's so much more. We are still figuring out what the heck hybrid means. There's no one answer on this one, but there's lots of things to try.
Love it. All right, a few more questions coming in. How does an online auction without an event fare in general? Have you done any auctions without a big event?
I have. I'm not a traditional event planner. So, before virtual events, I didn't do like a ton of auctions or anything. But for example, my sister is on the floor below me. I'm actually visiting her. I'm in Massachusetts right now instead of Seattle. She's a development director for a small nonprofit. She's a one-person shop. They're doing an online auction right now that does not have an event associated with it. And, a lot of the same classic tactics for registering and things like that are working for them. I think they almost doubled registration yesterday when they put out an incentive, like register by X day and you're going to get a gift card or something like that. So a lot of the classics will work for that. And frankly, honestly, if you have a lack of capacity, I don't think it's a big deal to try to do that. It really is more like an online campaign, and you should treat it as such, right? It changes the marketing rhythm. It changes a lot about some of the other pieces we've talked about, but if you're good at, kind of digitally engaging your donors, give it a shot.
Love it. All right. Well, our last question is, will we receive a link to rewatch this webinar, and can we share it with the rest of our team?
Oh, yes, you will. We're not going to make it like on-demand Zoom cloud available, but we're going to put it on YouTube channels, both mine and Cody's. And you will get links to that after this. So I'll make sure that we email everyone who was registered, and please share it with your team. Absolutely. The more, the merrier. We're not giving away all our secrets, just a lot of them. So, and let me just quickly blaze through the chat, because I did see a couple other questions in there. I just want to make sure that we answered those too. Virtual event burnout, we talked about that. Okay, recommendations on event backgrounds, whether they should be simple or more involved. You're not going to like this. It depends. To tell you the truth, I think having something that is attractive and well designed, regardless of the level of busyness of it, is kind of what we want to shoot for. And again, it depends on the tone. Like the Campbell Hall set was very, not complex, but there was a lot of different elements there, lots of colors. It was splashy. That worked for them. The Facing Homelessness event, we had eye contact with the people they served looking at you the whole time. That was very simple. But it worked. I would say to avoid be like, I have one blank, wall behind me where I'm clearly projecting a color, or I have a brick wall behind me, which means I can't put anything on it. Try to avoid complete blankness, but otherwise it's kind of a range. Okay.
That's where those textures and patterns will come in that we talked about.
Yes, very good. let's see, just kind of going through. I think we might have gotten to everything. Recurring themes for annual events. Is it too late for a theme? Oh, that one got answered in the chat. Thank you everybody for jumping in there. Okay, I think that we covered it all. So thank you guys all so much, especially for sticking around for the rest of the Q&A. And we're here as resources. We're here to help. And, you know, as far as all your virtual events go this fall and this spring, may the force be with you.
Bye, everyone. It was so great meeting you.
Okay, take care now.